It's 3:09. This is Don Shelby on WCCO. Yeah. 35 degrees in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Boy, am I going to have fun today. I hope you have fun with me. I'm going to be sitting down and talking with a guy I met a long time ago. And I never thought that I would meet such a star of his caliber in my life. Somebody that whose impressions on me as a young man, as a teenager, were akin to the kind of impressions made by the Beatles back in the day, by the Motown groups. In studio today is a guy whose career was born on the day the music died. Bobby V will join me in studio, and we're going to spend an hour. Jeff McKinney is gone. He's off to the establishment down in St. Louis, and so we thought we'd bring Bobby in because he's got a brand new Christmas album out, and it's a huge album. He's going to put on a great performance here in the Twin Cities of the Pantages Theater on December 12th, and tickets are available. We'll tell you how to get them coming up a little bit later. But Bobby V had 7 gold records. He had more than 100 chart toppers. And I think I can sing the words to every one of them. I hope that you will stick around through this entire hour to be with us here so that you can listen to this fabulous singer who is now a Minnesotan. Just across the way in Moorhead is sort of where, and Fargo, in that area is where he grew up, but now is in the St. Cloud areas, raised a family. And a lot of the kids are members of his band, and we're going to sit down and just have a ball with a guy who sang Devil or Angel and Rubber Ball, Take Good Care of My Baby, Run to Him, The Night Has 1,000 Eyes, Come Back When You Grow Up, Girl. All of those songs. And maybe we'll even play a few tunes from his new album. And we'll talk about the old ones as well. Right here, live and local with Bobby V, coming up in just a moment on WCCO 830.
Minnesota's 830, WCCO. Rubber ball like I'm bouncing back to you. Rubber ball like I'm bouncing back to you. I'm like a rubber ball, baby.
14 minutes past the hour at 3 o'clock. Well, I used to spin these records back in the day.
Just a rubber ball.
This is going to be a wonderful 45 minutes for me. And I hope it is for you as we kind of walk down memory lane just a little bit here on WCCO. And Bobby V is my guest. And we met some time back and realized that he had kept his Minnesota and Dakota roots to stay here and raise a family and be a part of the community, but you've never lost the star glow, because every time I hear your voice, every time I see your face, I see my own past. I see my own teenage years, and I can't tell you how many hours of wonderful joy you've given me.
Wow. What a wonderful introduction. Thanks, Don.
It's nice to see you again.
Great to see you.
And you haven't stopped making music because you got a brand new album coming out, and you've just filled it up. Great voices, great strings, and it's all about family Christmas.
Well, it is. It's we've been doing these shows now for 3 years, and it's I'm a family guy. I've got 4 adult kids, 3 sons and a daughter, and that's part of our history. I think a lot of people feel the same way. You get together with family at Christmas time, and the shows that we've done have been just great fun. Every town that we go into, we round up a little children's choir group, and they come out and they sing a couple songs. We feature them on the show, and then they come back with me and they do the bouncy part of Rubber Ball, and then a couple of other pieces, and it's just great fun.
Do you miss the old days at all?
You know, it's strange. It's odd to say this, but sometimes it seems like they're still here.
Really?
Because of the volume of the music that still gets played on the radio, some of the oldie stations, and the satellite stations. and the fan base. It's been a wonderful joyride.
Do you ever tire of talking? I presume you do, and you probably will say you don't. But do you tire of talking about how it all came about and the reference to, and even your own web page will talk about this, that the birth of the 15-year-old Bobby V as a pop celebrity and an icon came on the day the music died? And they like to use that sentence from time to time because it was you who had to step into the void created by the death of Buddy Holly, who was one of your idols.
So that's right. And you're right on both counts. I will say that I'm not tired of talking about it, and sometimes I do get tired about it. But the career has, I think because I was such a huge fan, and it was such an exciting time. It was the early days of rock and roll, and I was a huge fan of Buddy Holly's, and I had a ticket for the show, and ended up on stage that night helping to get through the evening. So it was really a pretty unique series of events. The radio station in Fargo that was KFGO promoting the show. In fact, Charlie Boone was the host that evening.
Right.
And they decided to go on with the show, which was kind of a leap because there was only Dion and the Belmonts left and Frankie Sarto, this other young singer. And they asked for local talent, and we took part in that. There was a guy in the audience that came up afterwards and didn't have any idea. We didn't know who we were. We just didn't have a name. And Charlie said, "What's the name of the band?" And everybody stared at the floor. And I said, "The Shadows." And he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, here they are, the Shadows." And anyway, it was like a Hollywood script. The guy came up afterwards and he said, "If you boys are looking for work, give me a call." And hadn't even thought that far. We hadn't even thought about work. We were a garage band. So it's a pretty amazing story. But all the synchronicities in my life around Buddy Holly music, and Paul McCartney owns the publishing, and he's brought us over to England a couple times.
They love you over there.
Oh, it's a great market.
They just love you because time has not passed for them.
No. Well, they go to England. You'll see it. It's history everywhere.
Yeah.
They revere the past.
Now, you say that, of course, Buddy Holly was one of the great influences, and in your early music, of course, it had that sort of rockabilly sound and even had a couple of licks, little Buddy Holly licks in some of the music, and you can hear it in Red Rubber Ball. Mm-hmm. But I would also say that I detected a little Johnny Ray in there from time to time.
Oh, well, I grew up with country music. I grew up with Hank Snow and Hank Williams and Hank Thompson and all that stuff. But I'm just a big music fan. I'm from the age of about 4 years old when I was tall enough to turn the radio on. I used to listen to Arthur Godfrey and Julius LaRosa. But I loved Frankie Lane, and I loved Johnny Ray, and I loved Peggy Lee. I grew up listening to all that stuff.
There is a lick of a lyric that goes through my head probably once a week. And I've never heard anyone else do it exactly like you with any other set of lyrics. And I would just be interested personally to how you arrived at the phraseology and the delivery from The Night Has 1,000 Eyes with remember when you tell those and you did a little, you sort of changed your whole delivery.
Sing that again, and I'll do the high part.
Remember when you tell those little white lies that the night has 1,000 eyes. See, my goodness. Now, where did you decide? Why did you decide to do that signature lick that specific way?
I don't know. I just, all those things were done live in the studio, and I've got tapes of outtakes where I've sung a song 5 times, and it sounds different every time I sing it. So I think it's just kind of getting the feel for it and just letting it be whatever it's going to be. But funny story about that song, when I recorded it, the songwriter was at the studio, Ben Wiseman, and that was the 4th song that we recorded in a 3-hour session. So we had 12 minutes left, and he was in a panic about this song, and because we thought it was going to be a B-side. But he came out, and we finally started the song, and we got it on the second take. And Ben came out. We had about a minute left, and Ben came out, and he said, and we were all thinking, wow, this is great. It's just great. How lucky can you get? And he came out, and he said, you got to do another take. You sang a wrong word. And we said, well, we haven't got time. It's get into overtime and the union, and it's very expensive. And I didn't even know what word I'd sung wrong. He said, you missed the rhyme. It was all about rhyme for him. Right. And anyway, no one ever noticed. He was the only one. And I still talk to him from time to time. And he says, I know it was a gold record, but it could have been bigger.
Except for that missed line.
That's right.
Bobby V is my guest right here, and he's going to be with us for the next hour all the way through the 4 o'clock hour. Stay with us right here on WCCO. We're going to check a little bit of traffic now with JP.
Minnesota.
Please don't ever make her blue.
Oh, man.
Just tell her that you love her. Make sure you're thinking of her. Everything you say and do.
26 minutes past the hour. That's Bobby V. And covering his own song there.
That's right. That's right.
My goodness.
It's a wonderful song, and I got the idea to turn it around. I had a wonderful experience 4 or 5 years ago when Jenny got married, my daughter. And we performed, my sons and I performed at the wedding, wrote a couple songs.
Yeah.
And then the reception afterwards, and we had hired a band from Minneapolis, a great band, to play. So we didn't have to occupy ourselves like that. And at one point, my son said, let's go up and do something. So we jumped up on the stage. And for the first time in my life, I totally went blank. I couldn't think of anything. I couldn't think of one song. And not even Louie Louie. Nothing came to mind. And then all of a sudden I looked at Jenny and I thought, that old version of Taking Care of My Baby. And I started to sing it, and I couldn't look at her.
You're killing me. Bobby, you're killing me here.
I couldn't look at her. And it was the most amazing thing. I mean, it was one of those, I perform a lot, but that was just such a real experience in my life that really touching.
I have never listened to that song that way, and I will never listen to it in any way other than that, because yesterday my middle daughter was engaged, my first child.
Oh, my.
And that song has to be played at that reception.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Oh, my goodness.
I did have to change a couple of the words because
of course.
It's not a perfect song to be singing to the daughter, but the sentiment of it, take good care of my baby, and she is the
Absolutely
baby. She's
right.
the youngest in the family.
Oh, my goodness. All right, so you still carry a pretty good tune for an old guy.
Well, this is 45 years now.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
My goodness. Oh, criminy. Well, you brought not only your daughter up, but you mentioned that you got a couple of sons who play as well. Mm-hmm. And do they form part of the band now still? Because they used to play with you.
Right. It used to be all three of them. And Jeff, being the oldest, is the drummer. Tommy plays the old doghouse bass and flips that thing around his head. And he's got stickers on it from every place he's been in the world. And Robbie, my youngest son, went out on his own about 2 years ago, and he's got a band of his own, still playing rockabilly music. And in a couple of days, he will finish a 2-month tour of England. He went over as a musical director for Freddie Cannon. So
wonderful.
Well, they come from Tallahassee.
Exactly. Still doing it too.
The old rockin' stuff. So it's I do those tours too, except I can't go over for 2 months anymore. It's just too much.
Would you tell the story that is chronicled in the Chronicles Volume 1, Bob Dylan, and when we come back, I'd like to hear the story of how young Bobby Zimmerman came up and asked maybe to sit in on the Shadows. Will you tell that story?
I'd love to.
All right. It's about 29 minutes and a half past the hour, 3 o'clock. Bobby V is my guest, and the old days being revisited as well as the new ones on this great Christmas album coming up. We'll tell you about Up North December, and we'll give away some CDs, and we'll give away some tickets if you stay with us right here. That's a promise on WCCO.
Minnesota's Acrio, WCCO.
Up north December's 30 below, and stars shining like diamonds on mountains of snow. Chimney smoke rises as straight as a pine. Soon it will be Christmas time.
24 minutes before 4 o'clock on WCCO, 35 degrees in the Twin Cities, and that's from the album Up North December in the title cut. And Bobby V's Up North December is packaged, this CD is in a beautiful metallic case, a presentation copy, and he's going to put on a performance coming up on December 12th. That's Sunday at 7 o'clock, the Pantages Theater. And you can get tickets at 612-673-0404. And will you do all of the up north work, or will you work in some of the 38 chart busters and the 7 gold records?
Yeah, well, I actually have quite a few songs that are older than Christmas songs. So we're going to do them all.
Written by Charles Dickens.
There you go. Yeah, no, we're mixing it up. And I come out and we do about a 6 or 7 selection of Christmas songs, and then we get into the rock and roll, and then just kind of go back and forth. It's a fun production, and I'm really looking forward to working with the Metropolitan Boys Choir. That's a wonderful, wonderful choir. And George Maurer, who is my regular keyboardist, has his own jazz band, and we're featuring him on the show as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Speaking of piano players and keyboard artists, there was a long, long time ago, before anyone had ever heard of Bob Dylan, a fellow who wanted to be a part of your group, at least for a little while. Mm-hmm. Tell that story.
Oh, 1959. We had just recorded our first record, and it was just going gangbusters here in the upper Midwest, in Fargo and Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and Aberdeen, South Dakota, and all these little towns in Duluth. And it was went into the number 1 position, and Bill was in a little record shop in Fargo, Sam's Record Land, and this little guy came up to him and introduced himself and said he heard that we were looking for a piano player, which we were. And they went over to the radio station, and there was a piano in the lobby, and he tried him out a little bit. And he came back. He said, "I think we found the guy." And so we bought him a shirt to match ours, and picked him up for the gig, and in our '54 Oldsmobile. And we had forgotten to ask him if he had we had just expected that he had a little electric Wurlitzer, but he had nothing. He didn't have a piano. So that was the first surprise. And we went on to I don't remember what town in North Dakota it was anymore. I've got it written down someplace. But we were playing in a church basement, and there was a piano down there, and he played that piano. And I realized as the evening progressed that he was only playing in the key of C. And and when he wasn't playing the piano, he'd be up alongside of me doing the little hand claps. Well, I don't want a lot of loving, the old rockabilly stuff.
Sure, yeah.
And great, he did harmony parts, and he was getting great energy. And anyway, to make a long story short, we paid him $15 a night. He just only worked for us for that weekend, and he then decided it wasn't going to work because none of us were making any money, and we couldn't afford to buy a piano. So he left, and he came down to Minneapolis, and that's when he went into University of Minnesota.
Right.
And when he was with us, that short period of time, he wanted to call himself Elston Gunn, and he wrote it out with 3 N's, Gunnn. Anyway, he went to New York, and the rest of that story for me, that was the last that I saw of him until I think it was 1961. I was in Greenwich Village, and I saw an album cover in the music store, and I looked at that picture, and I thought, it said Bob Dylan, and I thought to myself, looks like Zimmerman.
Yeah, Elston Gunn to me.
Right.
And did he come down and see a show you were doing?
He did. He in the Chronicle, he talks about coming, I think it was the Brooklyn Fox or something like that he mentioned, but I remember it as being Staten Island.
Yeah.
We did a show in Staten Island, and it was an early show and a late show, and there was enough light in there where I could see about 10 rows back, and he was sitting in the 4th row. That's what I remember, and we talked after that. And that I didn't see him again until 1990, I think it was. He played in Fargo, and I sent a letter to him welcoming him back to the Midwest.
Yeah.
And that was, a few other little odds and ends. And he paged me. My wife and I went backstage right before he went on. And so we were chatting, and he had this wonderful conversation. He's asking me about my brother and the Shadows and all kinds of the Red Apple Cafe in Fargo. And I started getting uncomfortable thinking, this is a break, and he's about to go on stage, and he's leaning against a chair just talking. And anyway, it was wonderful. And, gave him a nice hug, and when he left, and that was it. So there was something about, it wasn't a long-term friendship. I would certainly not call him a close friend, but in those young days of working together and being together, because he was in Fargo all summer, it was... a lot of energy and a lot of excitement. There was, rock and roll was brand new.
My, let's talk more about that coming up, okay? It's about 19 minutes before the hour, 4 o'clock on WCCO. Paul Douglas is standing by in our weather center with a little bit of weather.
They say that you're a runaround lover, though you say it isn't so. around for another. I'll know, believe me, I'll know. 'Cause a night has 1,000 eyes, and 1,000 eyes can't help but see if you are true to me. So remember when you tell those little white lies that the night has 1,000 eyes.
What a wonderful song. Bobby V. And he's my guest here on WCCO. Coming up on the 12th of December, Sunday at 7 o'clock at the Pantages Theater. You can go see this fabulous man and his wonderful talent, a great group, including the Metropolitan Boys Choir, with the debut of Up North December, a brand new CD about Christmas. And this is just going to be a great night for the holidays, and I hope you get involved. St. Cloud Symphony string players will be there as well, old and new Christmas songs, hits from the 60s as well. So make sure that you put that on your calendar. And we're going to give away a few tickets here. And if you want to ask a question, if anybody there remembers seeing Bobby V when he was a boy, and I mean a boy because when he started out, he was just 15 years of age. And with that crystal clear, what Bob Dylan called almost a metallic sound as an instrument, as people refer to the great voiced people of the world. Give us a call at 651-989-9226 and 1-800-327-8255. We've got tickets and CDs to give away coming up here, and we'll also do that over the next hour. If you had to pick a moment in time when you were surrounded, when you were on the tours, or even later when you were on the oldies tours, when you were surrounded by names that will live eternally in the annals of rock and roll, do you remember tours and times that stick in your mind the most and the people you met?
Oh, boy, that's a tough one. There's been so many. I mean, I remember working in England, doing a television show with the Beatles.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get out of the theater. It was so surrounded by people, young girls screaming. And we ended up, took an hour to get the police come over and, open up a channel for the cars to get out. But I think probably the one that left the greatest impression on me was back in the early 60s, I used to go to New York to do Christmas shows, holiday shows. They used to do Easter shows as well. And it was always Murray the K, Wynn's Radio.
Sure.
And the shows went for 10 days. And we did 5 shows a day. So we'd start at 10 o'clock in the morning. Now think about this. 10 o'clock in the morning, and the last show was about 9 o'clock at night. And the early shows were just the moms and their little kids, and then all of a sudden the audience got older and older and drunker as the evening went on. And there would be bottles and beer openers flying up on the stage. But I got to meet so many great people. Dion DiMucci, Dion and the Belmonts, we shared a dressing room, and Del Shannon. I remember working with Bo Diddley for the first time,
Really?
and Ray Charles, the first time I got to meet him, 1961.
Have you seen the movie Ray, by the way?
Oh, man, what a movie.
Isn't that absolutely eerie?
Amazing. Yeah.
Because I had interviewed him when he was about the age that he is portrayed by Jamie Foxx.
Yeah.
And he's got him.
Oh, yeah,
He nails
absolutely.
him.
Yeah. I wasn't prepared for it. So often those kinds of movies come out that and they get the big hype and they just don't work. But this movie was magic.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
You worked with Jackie Wilson?
Worked with Jackie Wilson. I've worked with just about everybody. I mean, a lot of the doo-wop groups that we never got to see here in the Midwest, the Moonglows and the Nutmegs and the Spaniels and the Turbans, and all of those groups would be on those shows. And that was exciting. And Danny and the Juniors and Neil Sedaka and Gene Pitney and the Everly Brothers, and they all did those shows. So it was like, we got to see a lot of them that came through here at the Prom Ballroom and the Surf in Clear Lake, Iowa, where Buddy Holly performed. But it was really exciting.
We'll be back with Bobby V, and we'll talk a little bit more about Up North December, this brand new album that is available. And we'll take your phone calls at 651-989-9226 and 1-800-327-8255 in about 8.5 minutes before 4 o'clock on WCCO. Let's check a little bit of traffic now with JP.
Minnesota's Rio, WCCO.
Whoa, yeah. Love you more than I can say. I'll love you twice as much tomorrow. Whoa, whoa, love you more than I can say.
5 minutes before 4 o'clock. The voice of Bobby V with a brand new album out called Up North December, and a big show coming up Sunday, December 12th at 7 o'clock at the Pantages Theater. For tickets, you can call the Arts Line at 612-673-0404, 612-673-0404. And Bobby V is with me right now, and we've opened up the phone lines to Scott. How are you, Scott? This is Don Shelby, and you're with Bobby V.
Hello, Don. How are you?
Very well.
Good. Love listening to the program.
Thank you.
I have a question of all of the artists that Bobby has, been in contact with over the many years.
Mm-hmm.
Which one in its earliest, in their earliest, was the one that he knew would make it?
Boy, that's interesting. After my career started, I was working with artists who had already made it, and the amazing thing about that time period of the '60s is that there are a lot of them that are still out there working. Neil Sedaka. First time I worked with him was at the Brooklyn Paramount, and it was clear to me that he had some magic in his voice and in his writing ability and his ability to play the piano. I remember going to shows and seeing Jerry Lee Lewis for the first time at the Moorhead Armory, and he came out and he did about a 7-minute spot, and it absolutely stole the show for the evening. It was just everybody else could have gone home.
Did you ever get a chance to work with? I went to an Armory show one time and saw Jackie Wilson and Ray Charles and a kid called Little Stevie Wonder in a show, and he was, I guess, 14 or 13. And I mean, you just talk about steal a show. He was the first guy on the bill, and nobody wanted him to leave the stage. Did you ever see him when he was a kid?
I didn't. No, I never worked with him.
That would be one where you would say automatically there's a great star in the making. But you did work with the Rolling Stones. In fact, the Rolling Stones opened for you in Texas.
They came. Yeah, that was their first tour, and I think people that grew up in that time period remember the Rolling Stones came through Minneapolis, and it was no big deal. It took a while for their career to really take off in this country, but we were down in San Antonio, Texas, playing the Teen Fair of Texas, and. They had the little usherettes. They had candy stripe outfits on. It was a wonderful time in America. And we were playing in this huge building that had no air conditioning, and it was just sweltering and hot in there. And the Rolling Stones, when they were introduced, and we still had our suits on and ties and everything. We went out and did our show. And when they introduced the Rolling Stones, they all came out and they had like tank tops on and T-shirts.
And they haven't changed them since then.
No, right.
By the way.
And they came out carrying their amplifiers, and they set them down. And so it took them 5 minutes to get plugged in and then start playing. Then they went into walking the dog. And afterwards, the promoter for the show came back and said, "Could you guys change your clothes? You look horrible." And they right on the spot, they all took off their shirts and changed with each other. Rock and roll.
And it was never the same
Never
after. Bobby V is my guest, and he's consented to stick around a little bit while longer. And we're going to give to Scott his choice of tickets or a CD, and we'll open up the phone lines coming up at 989-9226 and 1-800-327-8255 for questions for Bobby V. And we'll play more of the Up North December album, which you can get tickets to see in live performance at 612-673-0404 on WCCO, live and local 830.
Minnesota's 830 WCCO.
Silver bells and mistletoe and sleigh rides through the falling snow. A Christmas wish from long ago. Peace on earth, goodwill to all. Holly jolly Christmas cheer to all our loved ones far and near. A wish we wish this time of year. Peace on earth, goodwill to all.
Almost 15 minutes past 4 o'clock on WCCO, 35 degrees in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul. Bobby V is my guest and has been my guest since the beginning of the show. We've been on for an hour now. Jimmy, who do we have? Aaron, this is Don Shelby on WCCO, and this is Bobby V you're talking to. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, how are you guys today?
Wonderful.
Good. question for Bobby.
Yeah.
Bobby, my mother was a huge fan and still is a huge fan of yours. And in growing up in our household, your name was brought up quite often, and the stories seem to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
As they should.
Yeah.
She grew up in northwestern Minnesota in small town of Fertile, and there was a place out there on Maple Lake that she said you played quite often.
Maple Lake Pavilion.
Yes, sir.
Believe it or not, I'm going to be playing there next summer. I am.
Oh, really?
I haven't been there in 35 years.
Is your mom still with us?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, then you got to make sure you find out when that date is and take her to it.
I definitely will. I have relatives that live up there on that lake and in that area, and we would love to join you. The thing that I had to question was when the stories kept growing a little bit, where she said that you had bought a brand new Volkswagen Beetle, and she had made a birthday cake for you of a Volkswagen Beetle. And at one point, about 15 years ago, I happened to be in college in St. Cloud in Menards working, and my boss happened to be standing next to me, said, "Do you know who that is right there?" And I said, "No." And he said that it was Bobby V. And I said, "Oh, boy, I get my chance to question you on this deal."
That's funny.
And I approached you, and at that point you had recalled that she had made a birthday cake of a Volkswagen Beetle.
I have pictures of it. I do. I'm not kidding. I actually have pictures of that cake. And I remember your mother.
I told her that I had approached you and asked you and questioned that part of the story, and she was absolutely embarrassed that I had done so.
No, that's a great story. And I can tell you that I enjoyed the cake a lot more than I enjoyed driving around in that Volkswagen.
Aaron, you make sure that you get her for Mother's Day out there to see Bobby V perform.
We would love it, and we love your music, and thank you very much.
Thanks for the call.
And if you can, Aaron, try to get down here. We're going to give you tickets to see this concert down here. Maybe you can get up there and to Fertile and ask your mom to come down and take in this December 12th performance at the Pantages Theater at 7 o'clock. It'll be just wonderful.
I'm sure she'd love it.
All right. Well, thanks for calling in, Aaron. It's about 17 minutes past the hour. Al, Don Shelby on WCCO. Big Al's got a question for Bobby V.
Hi, Don.
How you?
Enjoy your show.
Nice to have you with us.
Bobby, what did you say the name of your sons were?
The drummer, my oldest son, is Jeff, and Tommy is the middle son, plays the bass. Robbie is my third son.
Oh, I was wondering if one of them was Scotty, the song Watching Scotty Grow.
Watching Scotty Grow. That was a Bobby Goldsboro song, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was who?
Bobby Goldsboro.
Oh, that was Bobby Goldsboro.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought that was maybe your song.
Oh, you don't have to apologize. There were so many Bobbies. I don't know how anybody could keep track of them all.
And they never confused you for Bobby Vinton, did they?
Oh, never. Never.
Thanks, Big Al, for your phone call.
Thanks, Al.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've got Jennifer. He's got 3 sons and a daughter, and Jennifer V. Whittet is with us. What was it like growing up knowing that your father was one of the great icons of rock and roll?
Well, do you mean other than thinking that Dick Clark was my uncle till I was about 10? Other than that, it felt pretty normal. I was pretty much a normal kid, and in the 80s, Dad moved us back from L.A. to Minnesota, St. Cloud, and so I grew up a pretty normal Midwest kid, pretty grounded in, the Midwest and its qualities.
And you've stayed involved in music.
And I have a little bit more I have a design business. My 3 brothers have probably have the biggest stories of traveling and working with my dad. And, it's fun listening to you guys talk and your nostalgia and hearing Dad talk about take care of my baby and your daughter getting engaged. And my biggest memory that's going to become is the night I met my husband, BJ. I was on the dance floor beneath the stage of Don Shelby singing the blues with the WCCO Blues Band.
Another great musical moment in history.
One for your listening audience there.
Well, it's nice to have you here with Dad.
Thanks, Don.
It's good to have you here. And Bobby V will be back and answer your phone calls in just a moment. It's 651-989-9226 and 1-800-327-8255 after we check on WCCO's exclusive airborne traffic with Jerry Peterson.
Minnesota's 830 WCCO.
23 minutes past the hour. Bobby V is with me. 38 chart-busting songs, 7 gold records, with a new CD out called Up North December, with a performance coming up Sunday, December 12th at 7 p.m. at the Pantages Theater, and tickets are available at 612-673-0404, and it'll be a wonderful performance because of the numbers of people that he has in there backing him up, including the Metropolitan Boys Choir and the St. Cloud Symphony Strings. So this is something you'll have to see. And if you give us a call here at 651-989-9226 and 1-800-327-8255, we'll get you a CD or tickets, your choice, coming up here in just a moment. But, Bobby, one of the things I wanted to say to you is that with the development of rock and roll, from the time that you first entered the fray, which was maybe 5 years after rock and roll started to begin to bubble and percolate, it's now ended up in from all different kinds, heavy metal music, rap music, and things like that. But my daughters all grew up without being pressured to do so, choosing to listen to the old music, choosing to listen to Bobby V. And I had some music on, and we were driving to the lakes one day up in Alec, and one of the kids said to me, "Why don't they make music as good today as they did then?" And I thought it was an interesting question, because I absolutely believe it was better music. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that as a musician, if you can separate yourself from a person who lived a life at that time?
Boy, nicely put. I'm not I'm not sure that I can. I know that I love lyrics. And that's what I really love.
Yeah.
As much as I like melodies, I love a good lyric and something that brings me in. And it can be something, very simple. I mean, most of the good stuff is simple. We were talking about that earlier. It was a great time in my life, and I have proud associations with a lot of the music and a lot of the writers and people that were in the industry at that time. Not too many of them still doing that. I mean, it's changed so drastically over the years. It's a whole, and it really is. It's a young man's business. I mean, you look at the pop market today; it's as young as it ever was. But the music of the late 50s and in the early 60s, although it hasn't really been saluted greatly at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, nor have the artists from that time period, the songs have lived on big time all over the world.
I watch PBS every once in a while. They do these great big concerts out of Philly where they brought back in all of the great old-time doo-wop singers, and now they've got CDs and videotapes and records of these great performances of as you mentioned, some the Crows are in there, and monotones, and some of the people who started in the harp tones as well. My goodness, and beautiful. And you even see even Johnny Maestro in his various incarnations as he developed as a singer and with his various groups from 16 Candles on. But I think that it was innocence. It represented innocence. There's not much that you can do with a lot of the music today. I mean, if you had a girlfriend, Bobby, and she was going to leave you and date someone else, you wanted her to listen to Take Good Care of My Baby. Mm-hmm. You wanted her because that was how your heart was feeling at that moment. Mm-hmm. And you guys said it better than we as teenagers could say it to someone. And we want them to hear that record. Now, a song, about kill your grandparents or big booty butts, that's not going to be something you want, here. Listen to that. That's how I feel, sweetie.
Where do you get that right?
It just doesn't make any sense anymore. Rob, Don Shelby on WCCO, and you're with Bobby V. Hi, Rob.
Hi, how are you?
Wonderful.
Don, how are you, Bobby?
Great, thanks.
It was interesting listening to Don talking about the 50s and 60s because I agree with him 100%. I grew up a little bit in that time. My daughter, who is 30, asked me to take all of my albums and put them on CDs for her so she could listen to the music because she can't find it anymore.
Well, I salute you. You brought her up right.
She wanted that too for her grandson, so her son could listen to it. Mm-hmm. My grandson. What I wanted to say, though, to you, Bobby, is I've seen your show, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 times. The first time was in a little bar in Sioux City, Iowa called the Lighthouse.
Oh, I remember that.
If you remember that, back in the mid-'70s.
Right.
And the thing that I've always enjoyed about your shows is that you have so much fun with the audience. So many of the rock and roll shows you go to, the guys get up, they sing their songs, and they leave. You interact with the audience. I remember at that show you were going out looking for people wearing white socks. Which was,
and I found some.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. I probably was wearing some, as a matter of fact. But And I still have the album that you signed for me that night, as a matter of fact.
Oh, well, that's great. Thanks so much. Well, it's important for me to show up. I want to be there. I don't want to just go through the motions, and it isn't always easy, but I usually get there. That's my quest. That's my prayer before I go on stage. Let me show up.
Well, you do a great job of showing up, and I've enjoyed your music, and I've enjoyed your performances in Sioux City, and I saw you in Memphis one time. I saw you up here, I think in Shakopee or Savage one time.
Great.
And every time it's been a great show.
Would you like to see him again? We've got the Sunday, December 12th, 7 p.m. Pantages Theater. We've got tickets available, or I can give you a copy of the brand new CD, Up North December. Which do you want?
I would much rather have the tickets and go see the show.
Okay. Great. And see it live. That's Sunday, December 12th. Stay on the line. We'll make sure we get all of your information. Lance, Don Shelby on WCCO, and you're with Bobby V.
Hello.
How are you, Lance?
I'm great. How are you, Bobby?
I'm doing great, Lance. Thanks for calling.
Bobby, you probably might remember me as Lanny. I grew up on First Avenue, one block down from where you lived.
Yeah, okay. And
I was one of your brother Bill's best friends.
Okay.
We used to come over to the house over there, and I used to listen to you do a little practicing over there.
Oh man, it was a great neighborhood.
It was.
Yeah,
Yep.
just
We had a lot
loaded
of
with buddies. And yeah.
I got a couple of questions. One is, are you still wearing your hair nice and slick black with that ducktail in it?
Yeah, I've got this. Part of it goes that far back.
I can just tell you, sitting here, Lanny, that all the hair he has combed that way.
It's all going in that direction.
Okay. The other question is, where's Bill these days?
Well, sadly, Bill passed away in 1997. Yeah, it was very sad. He had a sudden and massive heart attack. Bill was my hero when I was growing up. He taught me to a lot of the appreciation and love that I have for music. I learned from him. He was a great player.
Lanny, thanks for your call. Would you like to get a copy of this album, or would you like to go see the show?
I'd love a copy of the album.
All right, stay on the line, and we'll get it to you, Lanny. Thank you very much. It is just about 31 minutes past 4 o'clock. We've run into the end of our time with Bobby. We expected to have him on about 45 minutes. We ended up an hour and 15 minutes.
Hey, this was a rock and roll party.
It was my plan, actually, to kind of push the envelope a little bit on that, because it's not very often that I get a chance to sit across the table from one of my heroes, and I sure appreciate you spending time with us.
Well, this was really my pleasure. I love your show. I listen all the time, and to be here with you is a real special treat for me.
Thank you. And Jennifer, it's nice seeing you again. And I hope you never see me again screeching on a stage. And go see this program. It is Sunday, December 12th, 7 p.m., the Pantages Theater. They've got the Children's Choir for the Metropolitan Area Jumpin' Jazz Trio, the St. Cloud Symphony Strings, and all of his family and friends are going to be on stage for this great Up North December performance, and that is at the Pantages Theater. You can call 612-673-0404, and we'll be giving away through the rest of the weekend these special CDs and tickets to see the performance as well. My thanks to Jennifer V. Whittet and to Bobby V. And we'll be back after we check on traffic with JP.